This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Zia and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. Join the union to vote on albums, pick one to discuss with us on the show, get access to bonus episodes, and our private Discord community. Keep the podcast ad-free and make the next episode happen by joining us at digmeoutpodcast.com. Jay, you know what time it is, as in it's literally you can look at a clock, but also you know that if we're up on a Saturday morning enjoying a cup of coffee, getting ready for some music talk with Jay and Tim.
We know there's an Australian on the other.
We know there's an Australian on the other side of the world where it's 11 p.m. or so. Is it 11 p.m. there?
Yeah. Yep.
Gavin Reed is back with us. How you doing, Gavin?
Doing well. Having a great time. We're I was just comparing the temperature there, so it's 24, but so it's 75 in your numbers. But we're 2 weeks from winter and it's 85% humidity, so that's good. I actually had to put a t-shirt on to do this, and I've just realised that it's inside out, so that's good.
That's okay. That used to be cool when you would wear your t-shirt inside out. You'd be like, man, my outside's dirty, but my inside's clean.
Look, man, you're telling us it's going to be winter in June. You should be wearing your t-shirt inside out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You should be doing everything backwards.
Guys, the temperature's changing inside out now. That's how it goes.
That's how you tell your seasons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You were just here recently for the Saints episode for our 70s rock podcast, but we are now transitioning back into the 90s, and you have brought to us a new record to check out. Will you share with the audience what your record selection is for this episode?
I shall. So the band is called Non-Intentional Lifeform, and the album is called Uisce, but because it's written in Irish Gaelic, it's spelt Uisce. I have a theory about Irish Gaelic. I think what they do when they make up words, they just get the Scrabble board, put the letters in their mouth and sneeze, and whatever comes out, that's the word. And then when you see it, you then pronounce it completely differently to how it looks.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. I love that explanation. I hope there are no Irish Gaelic folks that are offended, but you know what you did. So I love the fact that they included a parentheses on the album cover to tell you how to pronounce it.
Right.
Like
Very
they thought ahead.
courteous.
It's courteous. Yes.
How would you pronounce it otherwise? Just looking at that. Uisce?
Probably
Uisce?
Uisce.
Hey, Hemi Uisce.
And then I would say it and be like, that can't be right.
Yeah. No, when I looked at it, I was like, Uisce?
Yeah.
Or maybe like the U is silent. So it's Iski. I don't know.
What's funny is the band name is harder to read on the cover than even that word is.
Yeah,
Like I can't. I'm like, is that English? Like, what are those scribbles at
I
the
think
top
it's
of
Sanskrit, Jay.
It's like an Asian writing.
Yeah.
It's
Maybe
it's
or
an
something.
Asianified English
Englishified
with
Asian.
unnecessary umlauts.
Yeah. It's like a font that's stylized to look like some kind of Hindu script, but
It's something that
it's
would
got
be
a
on a
lot of
jam band
umlauts and dashes and
Yeah,
all lowercase letters and
pretty sure Rusted Root used this same font at some point.
I
Just
think Jaguar are about to use it on their new car.
oh yeah, that's right. They did change their badge. So Jay, had you ever heard of Non-Intentional Lifeform?
no, I hadn't. And to be honest, as I, reviewed and listened to this record and I looked at the title, I keep reminding myself checking which of the words was the band name. It's like, is this band called Uisce or is it called Non-Intentional Lifeform? Because it could be either. I don't know.
Well, what's really confusing is that if you go to Discogs, it's non dash intentional space lifeform. But if you go to their Bandcamp page, it's all one word.
No, the album cover has what you just said, so that's
Yep. The album cover has a dash.
non-dash. Yeah.
They need to get their shit together.
And they go by N.I.L.
Wait, if
N.I.L.
they go by NIL, then you can't have it all be one word, guys.
Exactly. Jay, exactly. I don't
You
know
have
what's
to just
going
be
on.
NL.
Maybe this is why they broke up, because they couldn't agree over the correct spelling.
That'll do it.
They just got fed up with each other and were like,
A
no,
lot, a lot of time in a van arguing about your name.
yes. No, the space goes here. F you, no dash. No dash, no band. So this, I did try to look up information. It's scarce about this band. There isn't any review on Write Your Music. There are no reviews on Amazon in the US. There's no there's nothing. There's one. I did want to share this. There's one review on Discogs from 2015. Mr. or Mrs. Hayden Pettengill said 5 out of 5, one of the greatest albums of any genre, period. So we know where Hayden comes down on this record. We'll get to some Patreon stuff in a moment. But Gavin, what do you know about the history of this band?
All right, I've got quite a bit because I stumbled across a podcast called the Meep Meep Podcast, which is somebody's going through the entire Roadrunner catalog, hence the name.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and these guys are on Roadrunner, so I got a whole hour of the guitarist telling me everything about this. And
Can you
given that they're
condense that down into about 1 minute?
um, yeah, everybody in this band comes from thrash metal.
Okay.
Um, they got together in Perth. We seem to talk about Perth a lot. As we've discussed before, Perth seems to breed different sounds. But just things just get mashed together there. Which for the year that this came out in, it does. Um, they I don't. Clearly, they didn't sell many albums because nobody's heard of this band. But they toured with um, they toured with Marilyn Manson. They toured with Korn. They performed with Kiss. Um, so they had
What?
some reasonable gigs. They opened for Kiss. Um, I can't imagine how those two crowds cross over, but anyway. Um, and yeah, they broke up pretty soon after in a very Spinal Tap manner. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, other Perth bands include bands that we've talked about: Ammonia, Kim Salmon and the Surrealists. Who else was from there? The Scientists, Jebediah. Who else am I
Trace Hoodoo
recognizing
Gurus
here?
back to there.
The Drones, who we've
Yep.
talked about, and yeah, quite a few from that area. Um, yeah, so I don't think I mentioned this album came out in 1997 on, I just mentioned, on Roadrunner, and it was, so the members of the band are Declan DeBarra, although he just goes by Declan. Um, let's see who else was in the. He also plays thumb piano on this record.
Home piano.
Yeah,
Is that what she said?
That's not a real thing, surely.
it says it thumb piano on in the credits. Highwell Stokes plays bass and double bass, which is an upright bass. And then Pedro, which his real name is Adam Pedretti, plays drums. And there's also Scratches by Ben Green. I'm guessing that's on a record. And then Andrew Day plays guitar, mandolin, trombone, didgeridoo, and has vocals. It's produced by Paul Koski. I don't know if Paul's, in terms of production, a lot of other stuff that we would know.
He's more of a pop guy, so I think he did Split Ends. But I think he actually managed to produce a Rage song at one point as well.
Interesting. He did do a Clouds record. Yeah, he worked on
Okay.
Evil Empire
Yeah.
and a lot of the other stuff I don't really recognize. Well, Kill Heidi, which is one of the bands after this band for some of the members. He
Yeah.
worked on that. And so that's the who was on the record. And they also have another record which I think was originally released as a demo sort of in 95 and then was actually put up online um years later. You can get it, I think, at like on their Bandcamp again. Um but it was like 11 song demo or cassette or something like that, maybe a rips or burnt CD or something, but it wasn't released on a label like the way that this album was. They also had a number of singles, and they actually got a song onto a TV show. They had a minor hit with the song "Living or Existing," which is on this record. It was on the popular Australian TV series Good Guys Bad Guys,
Mm.
which is the most fundamental name of any Law and Order show. Law and Order, Good Guys, Bad Guys.
Right.
Were you a Good Guys, Bad Guys fan?
Oh, absolutely. Of course I was.
Anybody was like there was an early I'm trying to think of an Australian act, like a young child Chris
Yeah.
Hemsworth on this or anything like that, or
Absolutely not. I think one of the characters drove a Charger. That's about as close as we'll get, and the Australian Charger is different to the American Charger, so um, that's about as close as you'll get.
yeah, okay, got it.
One of the main sort of male cops, whoever the female protagonist was in any episode, he'd always manage to sleep with her by the end of the show.
So he's a good guy by day and a bad guy by night. The looks like the CD for the TV show included a lot of our favorites here: Regurgitator, the Whitlams, Spiderbait, the Cruel Sea, Nick Cave. So yeah, there was quite a bit of 90s alternative rock on the
Hmm.
on the soundtrack for that. Yeah, they've toured with a ton of interesting or played shows with a ton of interesting people, and they broke up in 98. They went on to do different things. Adam Pedretti, the aforementioned Killing Heidi. um DeBarro was in a band called Clan Zoo. Andrew Day was in a band called Night Swimmer. And then the Sound Movement. um yeah, so that's the majority
Did
of
you
what we know.
did you get what Declan's also been up to?
No, what's Declan also been up to?
He writes The Witcher, the TV show.
Really
Yeah.
Hmm.
interesting.
So he's had a couple of bands since then, nothing, and a couple of solo things, but nothing's really taken off. But he's written he's written a couple episodes. He has 4 songs on the soundtrack for The Witcher, and he's the creator and showrunner for the spin-off Blood Origin.
Oh, he also did the Marvel show Iron Fist.
Yeah, and something with Aardman as well. So
Yeah, interesting.
there's
Huh.
a bit of a if you follow it through, there's a bit of a 7 degrees of Declan. He's everywhere.
Oh, he's Irish.
Yeah.
There you get the name of the band from. Okay.
Sorry,
It's
you
like
didn't get that from the accent when he was singing?
uh you know what? I didn't even pay
We'll get
attention.
into that.
No,
At
I've
times,
seen
at times I was like, "Huh, is this guy Irish?" And other times I was like, "Well, maybe he's Australian." And other times I was like, "Maybe he's English."
I
I don't
mean,
know.
to be fair, Billy Joe Armstrong often sounds British.
Right.
So I just assume that people are just doing things for an affect. Uh Whatever. Poll or Patreon comments. We'll get to the poll at the end of the episode, but here's what people said. Phil Fleming. This answers the question: what if Incubus played like System of a Down? Definitely an intriguing listen. We'll be checking that out more. Jeremy Amend said halfway through, and it feels like someone took 311, turned down the funk, added some Queens of the Stone Age aggression, and sprinkled in some didgeridoo and record scratching. Oh, there's a little early Arctic Monkeys feel here at times. And then he said, followed up with, at the end, getting some Killing Joke feels too. I enjoyed this enough to make it my lawn mowing soundtrack this weekend. Well, there you go.
I was about to reply to him with the whole, because the 311 thing, I'm like, oh, that's blasphemy. I'm going to come over there and have a stern word to you. But then he gave it the lawn mowing thing, and I'm like, no, it is perfect lawn mowing music. So all is well.
Well, I just got a new lawnmower, so I'm going to test it out.
Oh, be careful. You don't want to start off with anything too intense. That new mower, you might go too low on the grass and really burn it out. Being too aggressive.
I might destroy the whole lawn with my aggression.
Hit a curb and dull the blade.
That's literally what happened with my previous mower. I went around a curve and I hit a rock, and the entire engine compartment fell out of the engine. Like it shattered the entire ring that held the engine in, and the whole engine collapsed
what were
out
you
of
listening to? That's what we need to know.
Some Latin jazz.
Oh God. I'd destroy my motor too.
Patrick Testa said, good stuff. The up and down energy level on this album is well done, and I love the diversity from the groovy sounds to Rage Against the Machine influences. These guys seem a bit, quote, mad as a cut snake. Is that a saying somewhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. I think I replied to him. I was impressed with his mad as a cut snake. He's clearly had a go at being an Australian there, and that's good.
I figured that as such. And then, well, you said you had your comment, which you can save for the show. So Jay, let's get into it. Let's talk about Uisce by Non-Intentional Lifeform. What works for you on this record?
Well, we touched on it a bit. Vocally, it's really ambitious and not like anything I think I've ever heard before. It's as much about rhythm as it is melody. And they're willing to, cut from one to the next, on a dime. You don't know what's going to happen next vocally. I thought that was a lot of fun. He's using at times a spoken delivery that is somewhere like between almost borderline rap and just kind of like patter talk to like aggressive barking, but then it'll cut to things that are, pretty melodic and, a little on the darker side, a little croony. There's some stuff on here that there's moments where it sounds like Alice in Chains. And then there's some other stuff that's, a little higher. It's hard for me to tell if it's even the same singer because like we touched on, there are times, you can hear a thick Irish accent when he talks, when he's more, talking, but when he sings, it starts to break and it sounds more American, or there's some lines that sound Australian to me. So there's a mix of accents as well in that stew. So it's a little, I can't tell if it's the same person or different people. If you told me either, I guess I could believe it. But it definitely creates a lot of different moods, a lot of different dynamics. And it's really where the hooks come in. There's these portions where the vocal really will lock in with the drums and be very percussive. And the little phrases or little, sections of lines of lyrics that are just, those what I'm grabbing onto and remembering. So when I come back to the record, I'm like, oh yeah, this is that part where he does, does that really fast vocal thing or says this line or, and then I'll be mixed with some, simpler melodies like right after it that are easy to remember. So I think that, I guess I'm not a big, what's the name of the band? We mentioned them. System of a Down fan, but that's the only thing I could relate it to. Having heard that band, that sort of rapid fire, unconventional sort of vocal delivery was the only other band I could think of for those segments. There's other segments that sound like other bands or don't sound like anything, which is, I think, what I'm most interested in is when they combine all of these different singing styles together into a single song. It doesn't really sound like anybody, which I think is, what's most compelling about this record. And kept me coming back to it. So yeah, a lot of range vocally, and it's also both locked up and syncing with the music, but also contrasting it. And that's something, if you're going to be making this kind of music, that's important for me to enjoy it. If you're always in sync with the band vocally, I'm going to get bored. So I like that, it's playing with that dynamic to tighten things up and sort of go through these sections that are almost like machine gun blasts, and then contrasting where the vocal is not doing what the music is doing. It's doing the opposite, right? And you kind of, things open up, become a little bit more expansive, right? The whole dynamic changes. And then on a dime, boom, they sync back up again, and it's, everybody's lockstep, and it's a big, heavy machine. I thought that worked really well. So yeah, that's what worked for me. How about you, Tim?
Well, I was surprised by this record and how much I enjoyed it. There's so much going on with really just a simple four, band member format. And whether it's as you mentioned, the rapid fire vocal delivery that does, I feel like the first, sort of 7 songs give you this one side of the band, which is a very, passionate, energetic, funny. The farm animal song I'm thinking of as being a little bit funny.
Tell everything about you from your rotten, sunken eyes. The little habits that make you like a dog. Bark like the subservient canine you are. Hey, 10 more years of this and they'll give you a gold, shiny star. Hey! I can see the glass of me blazes your eye. I'm sure the day we use a moving speech when you die. I can see the glass of me blazes your eye. I'm sure the day we use a moving speech when you die. Push the button, repeat, repeat. You're stupid from animals. Repeat, repeat. Push the button, repeat, repeat. You're pushing from animals. Repeat, repeat.
But then you get to the back half, you get some really weird and interesting stuff happening. The title track is over 8 minutes long, which I was not expecting from this band. Like when that happened, I was like, what is going on with this song? And then I looked and I was like, Jesus, this is 8 minutes long. This is one song. And you get a bunch of sort of weird experimental things happening on the back half. And you also get some really cool guitar things happening throughout the record. So I'm thinking of, and I don't know if it's some sort of a pedal or if it's just the way that he's playing, but on Sister Julienne, there's this effect that's happening on the lead guitar. It almost sounds like two notes being played at the same time. So maybe it's an octaver or something. And it comes up, I think, in little bits and pieces here and there. But on Sister Julienne, it's the driving part of the song. It's just really cool, and I couldn't think of who it sounded like. It just sounded like this weird guitar lead that I really liked. But then you get stuff that is, like Pissing Silver. It's much more atmospheric in parts, and bass driven, I guess you'd say.
Mhm.
which I was not expecting. I feel like the band as like musicians are pretty incredible. Like they, like you said, they move really fast through this record in terms of like changing parts, and it reminded me in some respects of McCluskey, where it's so energetic and so bombastic that you're just sort of taken for a ride. Uh, it's but on the musical side, on the vocal side, I was getting like, people have mentioned System of a Down and Rage Against the Machine. I was also hearing like a band like Downset, like that was something that kept coming
Mhm.
into my head, especially when it's more of a speak sing
Mhm.
than of the the System of a Down like fast talk thing
Mhm.
happening. But at first, when the first song started, I was like, oh, is this gonna be a hardcore record? Because that first song almost sounds like it could be like a hardcore song from like 1983. And then they move around in all these different things, and you're like, oh, okay, this is just a band that's playing all different sorts of loud, aggressive music, and then also throwing in some weird experimentation. So overall, it worked pretty well for me. I just enjoyed the energy and the intentional sort of chaos of everything that's happening on this record. So Gavin, you brought this to us. What works for you on this album?
Obviously, a lot works for me on this one, but I think the musicianship is off the charts. Like some of the, it's you can almost describe it, and the guitarist did describe it as four individuals all doing different things, but also somehow pulling it together. And I feel it's the bass that actually does that, um, because the vocal is clearly off on its own tangent. The vocals came after the songs for the majority of this. Um, the drums are just hectic. There's double kicking all over the place, which that's the clear metal roots going on there. So the drums are just going a million miles an hour, um, and the guitar is sort of keeping up with them, but then other times he's sort of slowing it down. Um, so yeah, with the singing, I was glad that you said rapping, but then said it's not really rapping because the way I hear it, it's almost like how you get like in Rastafarian music or even almost speaking in tongues. Because he actually winds up singing so fast at sometimes that he actually sounds like he's gargling or something. But he's actually singing the words, and yeah, it's almost like a tribal, like a tribal. They get into like a almost a like a seancey sort of thing where they're just going and saying things that don't really make any sense. Now, what he's saying makes sense. He's just saying it so fast that you can't understand it in some places. Plus, throw in the accent. Um, so that was good. I love where they go with it. Like you said, from the atmospheric. I'm a bit surprised that no one's mentioned Faith No More. I found the sort of croony bits and then those sort of chimey guitars when it slows down to be very Faith No More. I was lucky enough that Tim, you pointed out that there actually was a previous album. I went and listened to that. That is very Faith No More. Um,
Okay.
which makes a lot of sense. Because every other band that we're mentioning actually comes after this or parallel to this. Uh, whereas both of them will do precede it. I was also really glad you mentioned McCluskey because I was waiting for, and from the comments, I was waiting for all it sounds like System of a Down. Oh, it sounds like a bit like Rage. Oh, and I'm like, I always heard it um, and I guess the accents of the singers help this as well. But I always heard it as that kind of manic, crazy thing that McCluskey have going on. The big difference being McCluskey are kind of doing it um, either metaphorically or humorously, and Declan is deadly serious about what he's saying. Um, to the point when they sing the song, which one is it? Um, where it's singing, you're all I sleep, all I dream, all I piss, and then they literally have someone pissing at the end of the song. Like that soundbite that's actually what that is. Um,
uh,
you're
that's
kind of
a
like, yeah, I think we got it, mate. It was, you could have just left it as a metaphor. But yeah, that's what I liked about. I kind of like, particularly with energetic bands like this, that they appear. they go bananas. I saw them once as a live band, only the once. Declan is a straight edge guy, um, and on stage he is a lunatic. Um, and I kind of like that all that energy then just flames out because how do you do it again? You know, like what would they sound like on a fourth or fifth album? Would they be? How would you do this by numbers? Um,
Mm-hmm.
the other thing I liked, and I'll have a weird analogy here, but they have so many hooks. So in today's pop music, a song needs to have three, four hooks to get on the radio. Whereas around this time, you have verse, chorus. Um, so the song Signal, for instance, has either three or four hooks, no matter which way you look at it. There's like the intro bit, then there's a slow bit, then there's a chorus, and then at the end there's that "You're right, you're right, you're right" sort of chant going on. So they've actually thrown a bunch of hooks that you can sing along or attach yourself to any of those bits. Like in a live setting, that could be the bit that people engage with. And my comparison there is like that Katy Perry Raw song. That's got all those different bits that people you hear them, you see. Oh, no, that was probably offend people. You see people driving along in convertibles singing it. We'll hear them, and they're doing the different bits of that song. And
Mm-hmm.
these guys have that within any given song. There are entirely different parts and
Yeah.
passages.
Yeah, I found it
But,
hard to figure out. Like, you just kind of experience, but if you try to break it down, you're like, was this the chorus or is that the chorus? Or
hmm.
they're just all, yeah, there's all these like hooky parts all mashed one after the next. You just sort of experience it.
And
Right.
interestingly, everything they'd done prior to this album um, was 2 minutes and under.
Mm,
So, and they did say that even when they were recording this, even though they'd only been together, well, they hadn't been together for very long when they were recording it, but they already had the feeling this wasn't going to be a long-term thing. So when they were allocating the album, and it's a long album, and I know you'll get to it, um, they said we need to put everything on there because there's not much chance there's going to be another one.
Interesting.
hmm
I wanted you mentioned about the like tribal-esque drumming. Spilling all over the floor has that. It has a lot of tom work on that
Hmm.
song. And it's really interesting because it kind of reminded me of in some ways like At the Drive-In, but then like something that would have been early, like on the Via EP or something. And then that lead guitar part, it sounds like if you isolate this, that do, like it's like a 3/4 or 6/8. I think it's a 3/4 uh lead. It's very quick, but I mean that could have been on that lead is crosses genres. Like could be on an emo record, could have been on like a Cursive album, but then it also could have been McCluskey. It could have
hmm
been, you know what I mean? Like it's such
hmm
a interesting lead that it kind of doesn't have a set genre. It just you could use it any way you wanted to. And they put it over this, driving tom beat.
Driven to know you, driven to want you. When you place your eyes on me, I can feel a single thing. I tried to love myself, but I lied like a swallow. There's no hope for me.
And
That song was actually written without the singer. He was sick at the time. And I reckon if you listen to the start of it, it sounds a lot like early Soundgarden.
yeah, even that it has
Got a
like a
bit of
sound.
Rusty Cage era
Hmm.
Soundgarden.
Yeah, that's
I
a
like
good point.
I like how the guitars are. Um, I guess in the way it's similar to the vocal. They're kind of chameleon. Now they're not as they don't hit you over the head as being so diverse, but if you really analyze it, they're not leaning into any one guitar stereotype trope too much. Like you're getting a little bit, you're getting, like you said, Tim, you're getting sounds that are like a little angular. It could be like post punk. You're getting some other sounds that sound like 80s thrash. You're getting some other sounds that sound like 90s new metal. You're getting other, but none of it's ever like um so derivative for a long period of time. You're like, oh, okay, well, this is just the thrash guitar player playing over this record. It's like very mixed up, and it becomes this organic, original guitar style that I think complements the songs too. It's not like I wouldn't. I didn't find the guitars like for this being like a heavy record. I didn't find the guitars necessarily being what's driving the heaviness. I found it to be the drums and the bass that are driving the heaviness.
Mm-hmm.
And the vocal aggression at times.
Yeah, vocal aggression. Yeah.
The guitar is almost because the vocal is so aggressive and percussive in its own way.
Yeah.
The guitar becomes sort of like your anchor.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like, I think they're using some down tuning here, and but the tones aren't like over the top, super compressed metal tones. I mean, they're crunchy and fuzzy and stuff, but they're not like huge guitars. I would say it's more like the sound of Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
Right. Like one guitar player, it's metal playing, style playing, but like it gives space to the rest of the band. It's not an overbearing, like new metal guitar sound where it's just like all tone and it's swallowing up everything.
Well, in essence, this is actually right before new metal as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like this is on the cusp of, like, all those bands were around. I think Korn breaks the year after this, if I'm not mistaken, and I clearly can be. And I think your Rage comment is really accurate too, because the way that Rage sometimes just almost use the guitar as a sound effect,
Mm-hmm.
like they're not playing rhythms or harmonies, they're actually using it sometimes almost as a percussion instrument or just to make noises. I think he does a bit of that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's one song where he plays through a practice amp, and that's the only song that has a solo in it. And then on the record, that solo is actually then repeated. So they've taken the tape, played the tape backwards. So the solo and the backwards solo are being played at the same time.
That's an interesting production technique. But I want to follow up on what you're saying, Jay. Like the first song, Hooligan was the last name. That's got a lot of like chuggy, like, but when he gets to, there's like I guess it's the chorus where it's this descending. If you listen to that, the guitar is playing more mid-range. Whereas if you think of it in like a metal terms, it would be like huge drop D, like,
Yep.
but it's not. It's letting the bass do that, which is a smart choice because then you can hear everything clearly. The guitar and the bass are not muddled together. Get the different frequencies, so it makes it a much more pleasant listen, even though it's aggressive and loud. It could have easily been over the top in terms of heaviness, and I think that would have been to its detriment. Is there anything that doesn't work for you on the record, Jay?
Well, even though this is happening, just before or at the time that new metal is breaking, I am hearing familiar sounds that are just less interesting to me. Like I said, I'm with you on the second half of this record. Actually, the way it ends, like the last 4 tracks, they get into this space that is fully embracing, like, the full dynamic of the band, which I think is where they sound most unique. And I'm most intrigued. When they're not doing that, I'm less interested. So like Living or Existing to me, when I hear that, I'm like, oh, this sounds like a Limp Bizkit song. Like it just doesn't sound as exciting and interesting. The bits that sound like there's some bits that sound like Alice in Chains to me. Like I like that they break out of it. Like you're not stuck in that space for too long, but still I'm thinking like, oh, it's reminding me of like, second second, rate grunge at times. Some of the Rage Against the Machine stuff, I just whenever I'm hearing another band, I'm disengaging a little bit. So that would be one critique. The second one would be the drums on this album are a blessing and a curse. I think it's, like I said, there's some double kick sections here that are fantastic. There's like 3 or 4 songs that just launch into these huge double kick drum blasts that really are powerful, but also incredibly like hooky. There are parts of the songs where like everything comes alive and there's a vocal there that's memorable and a guitar riff, and just it's being propelled by the drummer. But there's also a lot of this album where I can hear the comparison to At the Drive-In, but I think what the At the Drive-In figured out was, as they refine their sound, for the drums to just calm down a little bit. So this, the spastic energy could come from the guitars and the singer. And I think this band is in a place where they haven't figured that out yet, or they don't want to figure that out, or whatever. But the drums are too busy at times. I just wish they would tone down a little bit. Specifically, some of the tom and snare work. There's just songs like Fingertips where it's just like nonstop snare hits the whole song. And you're like, oh my gosh, like the groove. Let's do it with half the amount of percussion. That was a little bit of I think as I tried to get into the album more and more, something that stood out of like when I'm zoning out, it's usually because of that. Like there's just too much rhythmically going on, and I could just peel it back 20%, 30%. I could absorb it better. And the dynamic switches then to me would be paying off more as well, which I think helps kind of concentrate what this band does really well. So those are the 2 things for me. It's just like, the band finds itself, I think, in its most interesting sound towards the end of the record. And then, the drumming could be a little less busy. Anything that work for you, Tim?
Gavin pointed to it. It's a little long. It doesn't help that halfway through the record you get that 8-minute long song, which I understand its point. It's like it's sort of dividing the record in a way. Like, okay, we've just hit you with 7 punches to the face, sort of, and now we're gonna chill out for 8 minutes and go in this really weird direction. And some of the stuff on the back half is going to be weirder. I don't know that here's the thing. It's long, but I don't know that which song I want to cut. Like, I don't really mind anything on here. There's a few songs, like you said, there's a few songs that sound more derivative, and it's probably more when he's in the like the surge System of a Down form. Like that stuff doesn't always work great for me, but I wouldn't cut them because I still think like there's always something interesting going on, whether it's the music or whether it's his vocal or his lyrics, which the lyrics are all over the place. Some of them are very Rage Against the Machine, and some of them are very McCluskey. Like it's all over the place in terms of humor and seriousness. And so, it's a hard record to wrap my brain around in some respects because of the fact that it's so not unexpected, but just it's so diverse. And even though it's, if you play this for the average person, they would just be like, that's just a loud record. And be like, yeah, but there's a little bit of this happening. There's a little bit of this happening. So for music nerds like us, it's really fun to dissect. And I guess there was just a couple times where I was like, if you could just cut this down like a minute or two, that would probably be it. Like you saying that every song was under 2 minutes, like, yeah, I could understand that being an appeal. Like every one of these being a short blast it would kind of reminded me of that in a way of that band Carp that we did a billion years ago, where like every song was super short, noisy. There was tons of crazy drumming and guitar playing. Everything was noisy and dissonant. This is sort of like the more refined version of that. And it works pretty well for me, and I do agree with Jeremy. This is going to be a very nice um, lawn mowing album when I break it out. But I don't have any. I really don't have a specific complaint other than I feel it just feels long. Like I had to take a break afterwards because it's such an assault on the ears that like I couldn't just put this on repeat. I go, all right, now I got to go listen to something chill for a little bit, and then I'll come back to it.
Yeah.
Gavin, does anything not work for you?
I think I say the same thing every time. The number one thing that doesn't work is that it's almost impossible just to play around the house.
Yes.
Not appropriate for 4-year-olds. So yeah, that's a bit tough. What I thought coming in to this, that the bit that bothers me the most about this is that anyone listens to it and they start to tell me it sounds like this and that and this and that, and almost everything that they tell me it sounds like comes after this, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, that sounds like this, not the other way
Mhm.
around.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know? So even the System of a Down, that album is the same year as this. Their debut album
Yep.
is the same year as this. So there's almost impossible that that there's any cross pollination there.
Right.
Um, and the guitarist was saying that after they'd broken up, he heard System of a Down Chop Suey on the radio, which is from their second album, 2001. And he heard it and he's like, "Oh wow, Declan's gone out and formed a new band and they sound amazing." Like that's how much he thought System of a Down sounded like their band.
Mhm.
So I went back and had a listen to that, and I'm like, to me, and I never would have thought I would say this, but System of a Down sounds really refined and polished compared to this.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that I thought I thought we'd be talking about. Oh, it's like there's I personally think that song number 12, the which is Pissing Silver. I think that's got a really strong Tool Anima vibe. There's
Mhm.
the whatever that guitar effect they do on that one is, and yeah, there's definitely some rage bits. I'd never thought about the driving, but yeah, that it does make sense. Particularly with the vocal where there's occasional nonsense, so
Mhm.
um, that makes sense. And what you were saying, Tim, about the length, I do agree that when you put it on, it's a long time before it turns off. But I'm also there's nothing I would take off it, so I um, but it's an investment listening to this album. It's they don't do things by halves. And there's a lot there. There's a lot going on. You're getting berated the entire time, pretty much. I personally didn't find the lyrics to be um, that diverse. He's pretty much telling you it's pretty much a self-help album. He's telling you to, you know, look after yourself, stop listening to other people, and live your own
Mm-hmm.
life. No one's going to do it for you. That kind of thing. So I found that to be that, and then the song "Farm Animals." Couple of things about that. So clearly, it's about people at desk jobs.
Yes.
Um, but there's an underlying tone of he's actually having a crack at the other people in the band, because they're all drinking and doing drugs and stuff, and he's straight edge. He's like, "Look at you, you're just you're doing the cliched rock thing," um, and then and again his lack of irony. So if he says that, he literally barks. He's woof 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 woof.
Yeah.
I think there's a
Yeah.
couple of songs where he barks. And you're like,
Mhm.
again, most of the time that's a metaphor. The other thing there is dogs are not a farm animal. They're a
Mm.
working animal on a farm, but they're not a farm
Yeah.
animal. So he's kind of
Yep.
mucked that up a bit. Um, but yeah, otherwise, I'm happy that there wasn't another one. I always say this about Nirvana. With Nirvana, like if they were putting out records like Pearl Jam, and we're up to whatever it is, 13 or 14 at this point, is it even compelling anymore? So this they never got they never lasted long enough to be boring, and that's or to have this energy fade. So like I said, I saw them the once live, and that will stick in my mind, not the you know 2015 reunion performance where the guy's 55 years old, and trying to do the same thing. So, but yeah, I guess Yeah, I guess the comparisons, I really didn't like that 311 comparison or the Incubus one, but to each their own. Incubus is a
Well,
fake band
it's
as far as
tough.
I'm
I like
concerned.
when you experience these records now, you know, you can look at the date it came out and then add the context.
Mm-hmm.
I was struggling with that. Like I would look at the date and be like, okay, well, this is early for this sound, but my brain is hearing these other bands. And now I have to reconcile like
Hmm.
some of these sounds I like and some of these sounds I don't like because I don't like those bands, you know?
But also
Right.
sounds you know already, you know? So for
Yes.
you, that came
Yes.
first.
Right.
Just a bit of trivia. Do you know who produced the System of a Down second album that had like Chop Suey and stuff on it?
Oh, I should know
It's
this.
a big name.
The Rick Rubin?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's why you have a radio friendly,
Yeah.
version of them. Uh, and I bet if you had given Rick Rubin this band, he probably would have coaxed a big single out of them because he's got that touch with regards to, hey, I can find your single sort of thing.
There's enough, I think, bits and parts of like hook ideas in here that yeah, I can believe that. Like a producer like him or any other that has a heavy hand and like is really good at taking aggressive bands and refining them.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's enough hook ideas on here that you could, kind of rewire some stuff and come up with a hit song in the same way that, System of a Down eventually did based on these concepts, vocally.
Right
Well, Living
now,
Exist or Existing was the single, and that was their first song that they wrote together. And they personally didn't want that to be the single. So there's a video for that, which they kind of tried to sabotage, but apparently the people loved it. I personally would have said I would have had Signal as the single. I think that's got the hooks. I think it's got some accessible sounds, like things that people listening to alternative radio have heard before at this point. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah,
That's the one that to me it sounds like Alice in Chains at the beginning, and then all of a sudden he goes to that rapid vocal thing, and you're like, "Whoa, that's not
yeah.
Lane Staley." Like we're in a different place now.
And he kind of exits with a chant, which is almost a rage thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the whole well,
uh,
fear of getting. Yep.
interesting fact. This was originally only released in Australia, New Zealand, Netherlands by Roadrunner. Was never released in the United States. Andrew Day in 2015 pressed 40 copies on vinyl, uh, 10 on clear, 10 on 180-gram black, and 20 on 150-gram black. Double albums. He pressed them as double albums. And so you can't get any copies on Discogs. There's none available for sale.
Mm.
I'm trying really hard.
I can't imagine how much. I mean, that's got to be hard to track those down. There's only 40 copies. I mean, this is like the Prince Black album. Like that's going to
I
be.
should probably just write to him.
You probably could just do that. Um, and I don't know. Yeah, they're each like hand numbered, and so they come with a letter from Andrew Day that's, I guess, getting into the band history and stuff like that, and the release. But I was thinking about this in terms of, we talked about this in terms of bands that were popular, obviously, Rage Against the Machine, System of a Down, Faith No More. But if this comes out of the United States, which it didn't in 97, I think this has, unless it has like an incredibly interesting video from MTV for one of these songs, I don't see it getting on radio or MTV. Like
No.
it would be maybe a college radio specialty show album, but on their own, they're too weird to get onto American Radio 97. American Radio 97 is like Marilyn Manson, Foo Fighters, Third Eye Blind. You know what I mean? Like this isn't going to fit in yet. It's too, and in some ways it's ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm.
So I could not wrap my brain around trying to like sell this to an American audience, which apparently Roadrunner was like, yeah, I don't see, we're not even going to try to break it in America because they're not going to get this.
This is a very
I'm
Roadrunner
interested
album.
in that. I'm interested in that because this band got signed to Roadrunner before they even existed. And it was Roadrunner wanting to create an Australian um, sort of catalog or a group of bands, and this was the first band that they ever signed.
Hmm.
And he signed them on the back of the A&R guy actually knew Declan and had heard him in previous bands, and he knew that there was something new on the horizon. So they signed them before he'd even heard them and before they'd actually done anything. So I'm surprised that they then didn't go on to actually release it anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, and they got him on that TV show. So I mean, they were clearly like there was a push. Maybe they were going to do it in stages. Maybe they thought, well, if it does really well in Australia and New Zealand, then we'll relaunch it. You know, because often that happens where you'll see an Australian release and or a UK release, and it'll be a different release date than the US release because they need to know it's going to sell. So if this didn't, go gangbusters out the gate, they might have been like, well, it's not going to do anything in the US, so we'll just pull. We're going to avoid that money pit.
They needed someone cool to champion it. If like a Frank Black or a Kim Gordon had been saying, "Oh, you got to hear this new Australian album; it's super cool," and said that on MTV, then rock.
Yes, or if one of the bands that sound like this, but a year or two later had pointed to them and said, "Oh, what was an influence on us was this
Yeah,
Australian band called Non-Intentional Lifeform." Then maybe like it would have gotten a release as an import or something. But I don't. Yeah, it's just too. It's too cross genre. It's they wouldn't. How do you market this in the U.S.? That's the thing.
well,
You'd
they're
have to
also
go.
broken up.
Well, yeah,
They were
that's
broken
true.
up before they ever got to tour the US as well. So
Yeah, it doesn't sound like they were that interested in the long term health of the band. We're like, we're doing this and we're getting out, which is fine. I mean,
would you like to know the story of the breakup?
yeah, let's know what's the history of the breakup.
Um, so take it back a little bit. The guitarist broke up a fight in the street at one point and got stabbed in the leg.
Ooh.
Um, and from that point on, he said he was he's looking back now, he said he felt like he was dealing with PTSD, but in 97 we didn't have that as a term. And he got a bit self-destructive. So they were playing a gig at the Punters Club, which he describes, and I'm pretty happy with that description, as the CBGBs of Melbourne. Um, they were playing a gig there, and for some reason, Declan's girlfriend poured an entire jug of water over his effects pedals, which of course shorted them out and destroyed them. So then his girlfriend and Declan's girlfriend started having a punch on in the crowd. And then Declan's sister, who he refers to as someone you do not want to cross, also got involved. So there are three women having a punch on in the crowd. So he jumps off the stage to go and sort of try and subdue them. Somebody tips a pitcher of beer on him, and he winds up like sort of breaking it up. And he looks up at the stage, and Declan's just staring at him with a "What the fuck are you doing?" Expression. And he was like, I'm not even coming back. That's it. I'm done." Now they managed to coax him back up on the stage, but he came back on stage, played the rest of the gig facing away from the crowd, and that was it. Walked off the stage, never played again.
Okay, well, that's a way to go. Wow.
That's like a '90s version of Spinal Tap.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
and that's also how he describes it. Yeah, he says
Yeah.
it's a complete Spinal Tap moment. You can hear now he's done the work and he's like, oh yeah, I regret it, but yeah. Anyway, that's how I was at the time.
Did they all like sit down and have a beer later and chill out?
No, I don't think so. They didn't speak for years, but they're good now.
Okay, yeah, but now they're okay. I
No,
just
no.
meant in the future they all like, oh, that was dumb. Why'd we do that?
Mm.
Uh, let's get into our overall ratings for this album. Is it a worthy album, better EP, or a decent single? I'll share the poll results in just a moment. But Jay, where do you land?
I'm landing at a worthy album. The critiques I shared, plus I'm with you. I wouldn't hate it if this was a little shorter because it is a lot to absorb. I was listening to it yesterday. I had to drive into North Austin in rush hour, and this was on. And probably not the best decision because I was incredibly frustrated with traffic, and this was not making it better.
This is raise your blood pressure music.
I
This is
know.
not chill you out in traffic music.
I know, but I wanted to get some more listens in. I was like, you know what? This is probably not a good time to be listening to this. But I appreciate, the timing I think is really important when you listen to this record. Remember, this is 97. And I think they're stumbling on something here that is really unique and dynamic and, really clever and creative. So yeah, we're the album for me. Where you at, Tim?
I agree. We're the album. And like I said earlier, it's long, but I don't know what I would cut exactly to shorten it. I think this is just sort of like dessert, where you need to have a set amount and then step away from it, because if you have too much dessert, you're going to get sick. This is an album where I'm listen to it and then go do something else, listen to something else. But it deserves its listens because it's a really cool, interesting, fascinating record that is, essentially it's ahead of its time in a lot of ways, which is a really cool thing to hear. Oftentimes we're hearing bands that sound like the bands became before it, because especially at the end of the decade, a lot of the bands, you can hear the Pearl Jam in them, you could hear this, you can hear that. This is sort of predicting where things were going to go, but in a much more raw form.
If you're a fan of any of the bands we mentioned, which we mentioned a lot, this album is definitely worth checking out, because you're going to get a little bit of that, but then it's going to take some turns that you don't expect, and it's going to take you places that are familiar but not exactly like the band that you came in thinking about.
Right. So we're the album for me. Gavin, better EP?
Yeah, that's right. Clearly a worthy album. A lot of my suggestions I feel this way about, and I imagine most people feel this way about their suggestions. I don't think you can break this up. You either like this band or you don't like this band. So if you like them, you like the album. If you don't like them, and I can completely understand people not liking them, then you don't like it at all, and you're a coaster voter. So yeah, I don't really see how you can enjoy this or like this and not come up with worthy album. Like I can see, like you've been suggesting, like a shorter version. I can even see maybe breaking it down into an album and an EP even. So you still get all the music, but it's not as long. I did just look up because you did mention Limp Bizkit, which again I'm going to crawl down the internet lines. But their first album was '97 as well.
Yeah.
So clearly, and we said this about grunge as well. While there was an epicenter for it that we've attached to it, this sound was clearly happening in many places at the same time. And this is less new metal. I personally, I wouldn't call this new metal, but there is scratching on a song. That scratching is actually a Tom Jones record, by the way. But yeah, so absolutely worthy album.
That's an interesting choice to scratch. Sure, why not? What's up, pussycat? So that's 3 worthy albums. And guess what, guys? At Patreon, 80%, excuse me, 80% worthy album, 20% decent single. So what you said, you either get this or you don't. I think that there's no better EP. There's just the two ends sort of makes sense. And the fact that this was 80 to 20, it's very convincing numbers that this is a worthy album and people should check it out. So if you're a fan of some of the stuff that we've talked about, like Jay said, you should definitely give this a listen. It's out there for people to check out. And as I said, they have a Bandcamp page, so you can support the band, even though they're not really a band anymore. I'm sure they'd love to get a few pennies, divided up amongst them for however much this is going on Bandcamp. But I did look up on Discogs. There are no available copies in the US of the CD or of those 40 pieces of vinyl. So if you're in the United States and you want a physical copy, you're SOL, because you're going to pay an insane amount for shipping. to get it over from Australia. I did see there was one copy in Italy. So the next time I go to Italy, I am going to go track that down. That's my main goal when I get to Italy next time. Like, we're gonna go see the Colosseum, we're gonna go see the Basilica, but mainly I'm here to get a copy of Uisce on CD in Bologna. That's my main goal for the next trip. Gavin, thank you for bringing this to us. Always,
No
like you said, you either get it or you don't sometimes with your picks, and that's always fun because most of the time we get it, I think.
Yeah, I don't occupy the middle ground very often.
No,
I'm
you're
not
not
Malcolm.
wishy-washy. You're either wish or wash, not both. I want to remind folks that if this episode brought back some good vibes, positive memories, or good memories of positive vibes, whichever you want to put together, join us at digmeoutpodcast.com to explore our free archive of over 800 episodes, history of the band posts, and weekly new release roundups. If you want more, paid subscribers unlock bonus podcast episodes covering 70s, 80s, and aughts rock, new release reviews, and access to our private Discord community. It's digmeoutpodcast.com. And while you're there, suggest an album you think deserves to be featured on a future episode of Dig Me Out. That's how the polls happen. Every month we have a poll in Patreon specifically of albums suggested through digmeoutpodcast.com. You do not have to be a Patreon member to submit a record, but you do to vote on the records and comment on them. For Jay, I'm Tim. We're out. I'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.
Don't listen to them when they try to